How's it going, guys? My name is Beast Reaper, and welcome back to my channel. So, to kind of piggyback off of my previous episode, I messed up during dinner in El Pod, and I got in trouble. After a few months of working up on the fifth floor for, you know, not really expecting anything to happen, randomly, my supervisor decided that I was no longer going to be up on the fifth floor and I was going to be working the third for at least, I think it was like 5 months. So I got banished to GH. That's the only floor that has one set of male housing units. On the other side of GH, at the other end of the hall, you have the two and only two female units. So with GH, that's your minimal to sometimes medium security inmates. It's your traffic violations or your DUIs. You've got unpaid fines, whatever it may be. Minor stuff that they have to do a little bit of jail time for. And that is for both G Pod and H Pod. The only difference between the two is G Pod is also the working pod. So you've got your maintenance workers, you've got your kitchen workers, and they have a AM kitchen crew, which is from 2:30 in the morning up until anywhere between 9 to 11 in the morning. And then you have your PM crew that goes in at 11:30 up until about 6:30, 7 o'clock. So with me working 12-hour shifts at this point in time, I was having to deal with both crews. I was picking up the AM crew when they were done, having to do a trash run, and you can only have the sentenced inmates, which they would wear blue. You can only have those inmates go do a trash run with you. You could take up to 3. It's kind of up to you, depending on how much trash there is to take out. And normally you'd get a max of 3, and I was fine with 3. Those guys wanted to go outside and feel actual air because the quote unquote yards were just concrete boxes with big mesh metal windows, so to speak, I guess. So they wanted to go outside and feel the sunlight and everything. And because I worked GH for 12 hours for the 5 months, I ended up becoming cool with a lot of the guys that worked the kitchen. And I always had the same guys in the morning that I would have to pick up. And a couple of them actually were super nice. Yes, them being inmates, you can trust them as far as you can throw them. However, when it comes to the terms of working the jail, these guys were actually pretty cool. I would have consistent conversations with them either in the unit or when we did trash runs, whatever the case may be. And if I needed something done, I can go to them because they also so happen to be the guys that ran the pod. And they would get something done if I needed it done. And they know that I didn't want them causing fights or making me have to do paperwork. So they would just make whoever caused me enough of an issue to where I needed something done, but it wasn't enough to where I could write them up, lock them down, what have you. I could just go to them and be like, hey, this guy's doing this, that, and the other. And they would figure out a punishment worthy of what they were doing. Like they would have them do laps around the unit, or they would have them do a workout by themselves, burpees on the top tier. They would go from one end to the other end with lunges. It depends on what they did. So, when it comes to having to take the guys out of the kitchen, I had trash run first. Everybody else would stay in the kitchen. I would get the keys from one of the outside kitchen ladies, and they would go back inside. They close the door. I take my three, and we go outside to the dumpster. We dump the trash. If there was trash laying about, we would pick it up. Sometimes I would help them, depending on if I had three, I wouldn't realistically help. But if I had like two or one, I would help grab the garbage bags and throw them in the dumpster. And they really appreciated that. A lot of other guards wouldn't go out of their way. I just wanted to be done with the trash run, so I didn't mind helping. But after the trash run, we would go back in. I would hand the keys back. I would get the rest of my crew. They would switch out their work boots for their sandals. And I would count and make sure that I had my people. Generally, one crew consisted of 12 inmates. So as long as I had 12 or whatever number that went in, a minimum at least has to be 10. So I made sure I had my people, and we would walk down our big hallway, which we called Main Street, and we would walk all the way down to change out. I would have to have everybody strip out of their clothes, boxers and all, and I'd have to make sure they didn't have anything on their person, and if they had like a personal compression sock, or they had their white thermals or t-shirts that they bought from commissary, then I would check those, make sure they didn't have anything inside them, and I would have to do a strip out process. I ended up dubbing it the song and dance. They would have to show me the inside of their mouths. If they had long hair, they'd have to shake out their hair. They would show me behind their ears. They would show me their hands, front and back. I'd have to do below the waist. They would show me, make sure they didn't have anything there. They would have to squat and cough. Realistically, it was the worst part of dealing with the kitchen crew. I did not enjoy it. It was awkward as hell. But it's something that we have to do. So, after a while, you end up getting used to it. But in the beginning, I did not care for it at all. And in the end, I didn't care for it, but I wasn't awkward about it. So, after you get done changing everybody out, you would have somebody in the property on the other side of the window. And they would hand you clothes. The inmates, once you got done, would tell you the clothing size. The guy in property would bring all the clothes to the window. You would grab them. You toss them to the guy. You go to the next, so on and so forth. After you get done, then you would have to take them to the body scanner. Just because you did a strip out doesn't mean they still can't have something in their person. So you would run them through a body scanner just like an airport. And if they had something, they would get put in dry cell. Most of the time I didn't have an issue with that. So after that, we would just walk back to the housing unit and I would drop them off. For some guys, they have to do community service hours. They would sign off on their paperwork. They would let me know, hey, I have community service hours I got to sign off on. So I'd have them sign off on their stuff. And then the PM kitchen crew was the same exact thing. When it comes to the actual housing units, I had one instance when I was still fairly new when I worked that unit. I had seen some guys in the first cell that I could see directly from my door through the window, they were snorting something. So I open the door, I walk in there, and I walk past where they were because I thought, you know, the good old booger sugar. But it wasn't, it was brown. So I talked to my control operator when I finished my walk, and he told me that they were snorting coffee. And I asked him if I could stop them, and he's like, you could, but there's no point. The worst that they can have is they can get a bloody nose. So that was just weird. But there was another time I was up in my control room and I was talking to my control operator, and we could hear a bunch of commotion in HPod. I turn over, everyone's like going to lockdown. We didn't know what was going on. And then we heard people yelling, so we assumed a fight. I go back down, I meet up with a bunch of other officers, and I was given the description by my control operator, who had called Central to review camera footage, of a native. There was only 2 of them in the unit at the time, and the first one that I went to was laying in his bunk with his hands underneath his legs, and he was laying there stiff as a board, and he was staring at me, trying to act casual, but completely giving himself away. So I get him out of his bunk, I cuff him up, I walk him down to the Sallyport door, I get him inside, I check over his knuckles, and sure enough, his knuckles were red, so he was in a fight. I don't remember who the other person involved was, but I took my guy, took him to our transfer cells, and I put him in a cell, I uncuffed him, and I closed the door. He ended up getting reclassed. The guy who he was in a fight with was taken to medical. He was checked out. He had a little cut on his eyebrow. So, we were good on that. But from what I can tell, that was the only instance of realistically a fight. Very rarely do you get fights in those 2 pods because people are usually going home within 30 days or so. They don't see the point in fighting. They don't want to. They want to get out. But I will catch you guys in the next episode. I hope you enjoyed it.